Welcome to the final installment of the Another Way video series. Today we'll be talking about our conditioning and the hurdles to overcome that conditioning, lifetime of conditioning, to really make a monumental change in our lives and move towards the exit of the most insidious dominant culture the planet has ever known. Okay, let's start. Final video of the Another Way series, and it's really about our own personal conditioning, because if we really want to move beyond what we've been trying to move beyond, many of us, for a long time, it's going to take some serious emotional and psychological reckoning, to say the least. And it's gonna take really moving beyond the fear that is so deep in many of us. If you're watching this video series, you're awakened to something. You've been awakened to something, and that is generally that what we are participating in is madness. You know, spending 40 plus years of our lives, in some cases more, going to a job so we can keep ourselves alive and our loved ones alive, is a fairly new phenomenon in human history. There was no such thing as employment. There was just, your job was to basically, live and stay alive and spend time with your family and so on and so forth. Now we go to a place, most of us, and we spend years, decades, away from the people we love and that we care about. And so how do we get past all that and then get ourselves out the door in trying to locate something else that is more genuine and has more depth? And it really starts by, it's all self-inquiry. So if we start with just being born and quickly taking our wildness being taken from us and being domesticated, we are quickly handed a bunch of labels and identities. We are handed our sex, our gender, our race, our nationality, or many times a religion, and a language. And those are just a few things that we have to deal with. We start, especially if you look at language, we just start, looking at the world as we look more at the words, the symbols for things, than we actually do at the actual world itself. And so we divide the world up, and we're divided up by the labels that are placed upon us. And that is right out of the gate. And to overcome that, well, you're not going to overcome that. But what you can do is navigate it and identify some things that are holding you back. And if you can start looking at the beginning, which is being domesticated, and the way that you're looking through, or the lens you're looking through to see the world, and the lens that's been constructed for you by parents, friends, family, teachers, and so on and so forth, you can begin to understand the divisions and the sickness, the psychosis that many of us are living with. And it's a life that has become really about a list of checking off tasks and devouring things as we go along, rather than coexisting with our fellow species and earthlings and really living more in harmony. And I know that sounds polyamorous, not polyamorous, Pollyanna, but we're so far removed from any sort of connection, not only from one another, but from the actual, other species that keep us alive, that being introduced to those new experiences is overwhelming, and then let alone trying to figure out how you're going to stay alive within these changes that you're making, these radical changes. So look at our domestication. We have to look at that, and we have to look at what we've been told we are, everything from the name of our species to, again, our nationality, race, and so on and so forth. And then what happens after that? We're generally sent to an institution, and we are quote unquote educated, and then our indoctrination begins, and we are told a particular way to navigate this. And it's really a one-way street on how to navigate this. That is, you are being trained to be a wage slave and to produce. In other words, you are a tool of the system. And the way that we deal with that is we digest a narrative, at least in this country, and that narrative is spread in many places throughout the world, that is about chasing our dreams and our aspirations. And so what we do is we substitute the grief and agony by taking this medicine that we call a dream or our goals or our aspirations, and we try to attain these things. And so we put up with being a wage slave because we have these dreams that we're going to accomplish, and as long as we're pursuing our dream, everything is worth it. And so we go further into debt, and our health pays a price because of stress, and we're working long hours, and we're being separated from people we love and care about, all in the name of upward mobility, which is part of the dream. And really, if we look at it, most people, in some sense, whether they are in poverty or they're wealthy, they have these narratives deep within them, and that is trying to get somewhere else other than where they actually are at the moment. And so there's not a lot of time spent in the present. There's a lot of time looking at the past and how we can learn from that, so we can get to the aspiration or the dream of the future. And we miss the actual moments that we're living in. And the actual moment we live in is the only one that's actually real. The other two are conceptions. And we spend our entire lives doing that. And I did, and I still fight that daily. Am I being present enough? Am I actually enjoying what I'm doing at the moment? And so that's really what our schooling and our indoctrination culturally does to us. So what can we do about those first two things? Our domestication, the labels, and then our indoctrination, the one way to navigate this, which is generally work towards upward mobility. Well, the thing you have to do is you have to actually first look at them and dissect them and look at the circumstances that you've been placed in, and asking questions. Am I happy? Am I content? Am I fulfilled? So on and so forth. Or am I trying to always accomplish something, produce something? And if so, why is that? And once you start to go and ask these questions, you really get to the big question, and that is, who am I, and what is this? What is life, and what is a human being, and what are we doing? And is there something we're supposed to be doing? Or if I'm given the gift of conscious life, is it best spent going to a particular building for the next 40 years and earning some paper so I can buy stuff and get to a different socioeconomic status? Again, this is the beginning of the unraveling of what it means to really pursue another way and moving towards the exit of this dominant culture. So after, obviously, we are indoctrinated, we become subject to this system, and we are subjugated. In other words, we are the system. And many of us at this point, we begin to resist a little, but really the resistance isn't something that's out there. The resistance is within, because the thing you need to resist is yourself. Because you've been domesticated and you've been indoctrinated, and there's a ton of conditioning that really is taking place, and you're sort of running on autopilot. And so really the resistance isn't something out there that you're resisting against. It's actually something internal, and that begins with self-inquiry and looking into what you're doing and why you're doing it. Because eventually what happens after you have accepted being part of this system, you then feel obligated to it. And that's where a lot of people who are awakened to the destructiveness of it get stuck, because they see what it is, but what they can't get over is their obligation to it. And I mentioned this earlier in one of the videos, is they have a fear, and part of that fear is the expectations of other people. What others think, what others will do, how others will react if they push back against the status quo. Everything from family members to creditors, so on and so forth. And they spend their entire lives really living an existence that is trying to keep at bay or keep peace amongst the expectations of other people. And so they don't have to feel that pain, because when you decide to do something radical, like maybe leave your job and default on your debt and go live in an intentional community, well, there's going to be some pushback from most folks in your life. They're going to think you fucking lost it. And your obligation to what they think is what holds a lot of people in. The other part, obviously, is knowing what to do. And we've talked a little bit briefly about some steps we can take and so on and so forth in creating your roadmap. And again, you know, if you want to talk about those things further, you can contact me after the video series, and we can go from there. So after we become obligated to it, and that, you know, keeps us in place, you know, we're paying our bills and we're going to work and we're doing our thing and we're supporting our families and our loved ones, and we're pursuing a degree and we're trying to get better and move up and so on and so forth. Well, we've become relegated to this life, and we're just kind of looking for the end of the road, that retirement, that where I can relax and really do what I want, and I just got to put in another X amount of years and make, you know, X amount of money, and then I can have the life that I want. So we become relegated to a particular incarceration. And that is where we are. That leads to relegation, leads to incarceration. And that's what we are. We are wage slaves. We are here to produce and consume. And we have not questioned it, because we're all generally pulling in the same direction. And the only thing I've done is stop pulling as much and stood up and went, you know, what are we doing? That's really the only difference. And the way to liberation is really what this video series is about, and that is questioning the story we tell ourselves about ourselves. That is really the process of tearing at the seams and the threads of the fabric that has really controlled your life. It's not your story, really. It's a story that's been handed to you, and you've kind of molded it a little so it feels a little better to you at times. But, you know, the story we tell ourselves about ourselves is generally the same story. And as I mentioned, you know, you're born, you try and get an education, you try and get a job, and you try and move upward. And hopefully at the end of that rainbow is a little pot of gold where you can sit and relax. Well, it's all bullshit. And so what happens is folks do different things. Again, they chase their dream, they speak out against things, they decide they're not going to shop at Walmart, they're going to drive an electric car, they're going to vote more. They do everything but the actual thing that it takes to challenge the system, and that is move towards its exit. And again, that's not simple. You're never going to leave it completely, but you can find spaces where you can live a life that has more meaning and fulfillment and time, because that's the difference. As I mentioned, have more control over my time than anyone else I know who's not living something similar to an existence that I'm living. I can generally do what I want when I want to do it. So that's it. That's kind of the basic outline of Another Way, and call it what you want, chasing a different carrot, moving towards the exit of the dominant culture. But that's the beginning. And obviously, as people start to plan and move forward and take actual action, different questions come up and different concerns come up. And that's what I want to make myself available for. So, if this series gets you started and you have more questions and concerns, you can contact me through my website. It's michaelsliwa.wordpress.com, michaelsliwa.wordpress.com. And you can ask me questions. We can set up some sort of discussion if we want to do it through, something like Skype or Zoom or Messenger or whatever from there, and move forward. So I thank you for watching this. I thank Dean Walker for producing it, and please jump through your window of opportunity, because if you don't, life takes over. All right. I hope to see you out here sometime. All right. Goodbye.